This is the final word. It is season 19. It's episode 22, and it's the first part of a two-part weekly. That is correct. This show is brought to you by Maurice Blackburn, the number one plaintiff law firm in Australia, and we couldn't get this show into one show, so we've decided to space it out, also because we're going to find out what's happening with Bangladesh potentially boycotting the T20 World Cup or backing down and being in it. We're not going to know that until about 24 hours from now, so that will influence part two. We're going to talk to Glenn Maxwell in part two. Why not? I'm just going to say that now. We're going to talk to Heather Knight today about what's going on in England and their new comp, their rebranded comp over there. We're going to talk to Emma John today, who's been down in the Grampians and specifically down in Harrow to the museum that is very close to our hearts. There's a lot going on. Thailand's women won a game by one run today in their T20 World Cup qualifiers, but we'll talk about that in the second show, not the one that's happening today. I'm watching Steve Smith batting right now in the Big Bash in a final because that's going to be part of the show today. There's a lot to get onto, but I want to start today, Adam, by saluting to Rob Hirst, who did the drums for Midnight Oil for so very long. So glad I got to see them live at least once in my lifetime. Phil Brown, the amazing photographer who we've had on the show before, pulled me aside a few years ago in London and said, I have a ticket at the Apollo, come and see Midnight Oil. And I did. And who better to write the obit than Andrew Stafford, who nobody's better placed with this era of Australian music. The
Absolutely.
paragraph that finished it off, he says, it's a testament to Hirst's songwriting brilliance that the band succeeded so righteously at pissing off all the right people, corrupt politicians, greedy developers, music industry fakes. Hirst fully embodied the power and the passion that drove Midnight Oil until the very end. He died on his feet. What a line, what a man, what a band.
Yeah.
And Vale, thank you, well done. And Adam, that is my run-in to the show today. Hello, nice to see you.
Hello, nice to see you as well. Well said. My own intro, I want to acknowledge a passing as well, an absolute tragedy in Perth over the last few weeks that's been playing out. I know a lot of people who listen to this program were very close friends with Tim Picton, who achieved such an enormous amount in his 36 years on the planet. He was an absolute beauty, Tim, and he was felled, he was hit, and he died. And it's horrific, truly horrific. One of the worst things you can ever imagine. Passed away a few weeks after the incident on Boxing Day. His big brother Chris, who's a dear friend of mine. Indeed, Chris was at a Final Word listener event with us in Adelaide a few weeks ago as well before this all played out. And has been a great supporter of ours. And the fact that he's lost his little brother, was such a giant in the circles that we move in politics and far beyond that as well. An absolute diamond of a bloke, and to think that loss, what that will leave for his young family and to everyone who knew him and everyone that, again, who's been associated with him in politics and beyond. So rest in peace to Tim and to everyone who's doing it tough in all different parts of Australia, and where he had such a big involvement, not only in his home state of South Australia, but in WA, where he was the state secretary who led Labor to their biggest state victory ever, and in Victoria as well, where he was instrumental to the campaigns that saw Labor return to office in 2014 and retain it in 2018. So, just wanted to acknowledge off the top that a lot of people listening to this will be hurting quite a lot at the moment.
Yeah, a reminder that we didn't want or need about how devastating violence between people on the street can be to the lives of so many other people, the ripple effects that go on. It's a somber start to a show today. It's a busy show. There's a lot happening, a lot going on in the world of cricket for a time when you might expect things to be a bit calm, a bit quiet. People think, the Ashes are over, middle of January, time to kick back and relax. Not in the world that we live in. So let's get on with what we've got ahead of us on the show today, Adam.
Yeah, I've got one more thing by way of introduction. Just, Jeff, it's so very much us that when on Saturday the lowest ever score in a first-class game was defended. It was a game being played at the National Stadium in Karachi, a first-class game, a ground we both love, Jeff. That was a record that previously stood from 1794 when MCC couldn't chase, I guess it was 38 or 39, and now PTV have defended 40. I've seen the highlights on social media. And
Pakistan Television, Adam. Obviously, it's Pakistan Television versus the Sui Northern Gas Pipelines Limited, the time-honoured the fabled, the grudge match, the big one, the one that you mark on your calendar. when the Qaeda fixtures come out every year, the first thing you circle in red pen is the Sui Northern Gas Pipelines versus Pakistan Television fixture. And yeah, my word, bowled out for 37. The Northern Gas Pipelines had a fair bit of gas in the pipeline, but, well, none left in the tank. Higher score of 14. They were done by two bowlers in very 1800s style, 6 for 9 and a 4 for 28, and that finished them off, Ali Usman and Ahmad Butt. So there you go. It can happen. Dream big.
That will be the feature of a Storytime episode in about 70 years' time when someone else has taken over the final word or something like that. Another thing about...
In about 7 weeks' time. Someone will be nerd pledging that right now, and we will be coming to it within 3 months, I reckon.
Going back about 30-odd years, only because you've mentioned him already, but Glenn Maxwell joining us in the second part of this cram weekly that we're trying this time around. He was asked a question. They do those annual name a cricketer you haven't thought of in a while things. ABC do it as part of their content capture. And then Glenn was asked, and so there's these, quite generic answers. I think Scott Boland names the same cricketer twice in a row, in 2024 and again in 2026, and the usual kind of suspects. And then Glenn goes, okay, Mike Smith, 1997. It's a brilliant bit of Glenn describing what happened at Headingley when Matthew Elliott made his 199 and Ricky Ponting his first Test 100. And the fact that he's got that level of recall is another reminder that Glenn is very much one of us. And that going viral this week and him coming back to talk with us about another stage in his career, it's all thoroughly in keeping.
News that came out just after we recorded the weekly show last week that Alysa Healy will be retiring after the multi-format series that they'll play against India in February and into March. So they'll have 3 T20s, 3 ODIs, and a test match. A lot of tributes over that past week about what she's done in, what became a massive career and got bigger and bigger at the back end. Someone who finished their career with this reputation as being the big game player, the person who made match-winning scores in World Cup finals, not once, but repeatedly, the remarkable 100 in that huge run chase. In the last World Cup just gone, they didn't end up winning that tournament, but, the biggest chase in World Cup history and so on. It's an interesting one, Adam. I find the timing a bit weird. That test match they're going to wrap up in early March, so that means it's less than 3 months before that T20 World Cup starts, which strikes me as surprising that age she wouldn't want to stick around for one more go. I mean, she's won half a dozen of them, so maybe it's just not that strong an allure anymore, and maybe having 3 months off, I guess particularly because her husband won't be playing much and they might actually get to spend some time together for the first time in about 15 years during that period. That might be part of it. But on the other hand, it seems a bit odd to hand it over and to have someone else will have to take over full-time, basically going into that tournament as their first assignment.
Yeah, I also admire someone who says they knew the time was right. She said that in her comments on the Willow Talk podcast that she co-hosts, she didn't have the same fire in the belly when thinking about what was to come. And she's like, that's the sign. That's the sign that it's time to move on from it. And, that's great, rather than hanging on and trying to get through a tournament where you need to be at your absolute peak. Not to say that it won't be a huge occasion when she plays those one-day internationals and the test match that'll round things off. But, getting up for a couple of select games is a bit different to getting up for an entire global tournament. So good on her for that. I was there in 2018 in the Caribbean when her career went into turbo drive. I know she'd been a very consistent player for Australia for a couple of years before that, but it was 2018 when she went into the stratosphere. That Caribbean World Cup, which she was absolutely untouchable at the top of the list. Clearly one of the best wicket keepers the game's ever seen. Had some terrific spinners to keep to as well. Did a great job leading that Australian team in the post-Lanning Haynes era. It can never be easy when you're the player who's stuck around for a bit longer after a couple of contemporaries have retired. There can be a tendency for teams to drop off a cliff. This team didn't. I know they didn't win the World Cup last year, but that's more a reflection of other excellent cricketers who are coming through from other countries. Australia, for most of that tournament, looked like they'd waltz it. So, and that's the type of team that she's been overseeing a little bit in transition, and also that she's already started her next career, right? She's clearly a a commentator in high demand around the world, and she'll go on to do whatever she wants to do as a broadcaster, and good on her for it. She's got that authentic sort of delivery style, which people enjoy, that confidence to do so, knowing that she's won so many World Cups and achieved practically everything in the game. I'd love her to make a Test 100 in that sign-off at Perth, her highest score, of course, being 99 in that format, but you know, that performance at the MCG before the pandemic is, well, it was an instant icon, and that's it, as has been reflected by others. An overused word, but her leaving the MCG, knowing that she'd laid the foundation for a World Cup victory in front of nearly 87,000 people, the 100 in the 50-over World Cup final at Hagley Oval, which was absolutely dominant as well. She saved her best for those types of occasions and had to do so having started her career slowly, and it's a reminder that she was part of that last generation where, you didn't, and this is not a criticism, it's just the reality that there was less demand in the early part of her career for those spots. It was pre, Women's Big Bash League and that type of thing. So she joins those generations in much the same way that Heather Knight does, who we're talking to later in the program today. So, yeah, I love those cricketers who started their career in sort of one place, where the game was in one place, and she's been central in driving it to very much another, and will go down as an all-time Aussie great and an all-time great of the women's game.
Yeah, had to overcome that struggle for results early on. I mean, she's 5 or 6 years into her career and still averaging single figures with the bat in one-day cricket at one point in 2015, and managed to shift that to become a player who averaged mid-30s. I mean, that's a lot. That second half of the career average must be huge, astronomical to push it up that much. She'll have 3 more games. Her one-day career strike rate's like just under 100. It's 99 point something. So if she goes well in the last 3 games, she could nudge it up. He's finished with a T20 career strike rate at 130, so very, very fast scoring, considering those first few years were generally slower scoring games as well, and just turned that over. It looked halfway through like it was going to be a very underwhelming career, and it ended up being one of the greats.
Well, one more thing. It's a good point about the strike rate in T20 cricket, just to zero in on that. The impact of the WBBL. The fact that she's playing high intensity. We used to describe the WBBL as like the showcase of women's cricket. It was the global, along with the Kia Super League at the very beginning, the global tournament, right? Before the WPL and before the competitive franchise interests that exist now. When the WBBL was it was a showcase of the best cricket in the world. It was double round robin. It was 16 games plus finals, or whatever it was. No, 14 games plus finals. It was a full season of cricket. And you can never underestimate the importance of those early seasons in I guess, providing that repeat opportunity to play against the best and to take her game to another level. So the Sixers, they stormed into that first final series, didn't they, Jeff? It's a long time ago now, but they won their last 7 games or something remarkable to get to the final. I know they didn't win it, but, the wider point stands that her career and her acceleration does marry up quite neatly with when the WBBL became such a big part of the cricketing landscape.
Well, won plenty of them in the time since, and I would say the greatest moment, it wasn't the final, but it was that semi-final. She's in the thick of that with that remarkable last ball, the Sarah Ailey save on the boundary, throwing it back in to Healy with the glove off, throwing the ball down the length of the pitch to effect a run out at the non-striker's end on the last ball to deny a super over. Remarkable cricket that she was involved in at domestic level, and it's great that there are these moments that can be memorable. Even we remember some things from T20 cricket. In 50-over cricket, Virat Kohli's back to the #1 ranking in the world in ODIs. Yes, turn back the clock.
Love this.
We've been on ton watch, Adam, after he missed out. He made that 93 against New Zealand last time we spoke, and New Zealand won that game. Kohli then followed up with another 100 against New Zealand, and a very rare one, a losing chase. They were chasing a big score, 300 plus. I think that's only the 5th game he's lost chasing when he's made 100. In fact, he's made 54 hundreds, and only 10 of them have been in losses. So 54 one-day tons, that means 85 international tons. He's got 96 in first-class and list A cricket put together. If you throw in his T20 tons, he's already got 100 professional hundreds. So, but it'd still be nice to get there just in the longer forms. knock off 4 more and get to 100 sort of professional longer form tons. But he's 15 away from the international centuries mark, and it could still happen.
I didn't realise that he'd passed 100 in professional cricket. That's a very worthy achievement of itself. And we like these types of things.
I think.
Yeah, and look, these types of things are, you can take the piss and say that he's the only specialised 50-over cricketer in the world with Rohit Sharma, but it's still a format of the game that has the World Cup that matters most, and he remains a dominant force in it. He's always had a game that's been perfectly tailored to 50-over cricket because he's a technician. Mm-hmm. He's the best technician I've ever seen at working angles, at finding ways to turn ones into twos, at picking the right time to shift gears and that type of thing, which is why he's such a behemoth. And he's too far from the finish line to get to 100. You would think 15 tons from here should be too many. But, careers aren't being extended.
He's made 4 or 5 in his last, 8 games or something. So
yeah, it might take, if he got to mid-90s, if he got on a roll, let's say hypothetically he got 10 more between now and the end of the next 50-over World Cup. That's expecting a lot, but if it were to happen, remembering that in a World Cup you'll play upwards of 10 or 11 games, then maybe he holds on for the next Champions Trophy or something like that, which would be quite something. So would love to see it happen. It's improbable, but the dream remains alive.
New Zealand won the series, so that's notable. So they went to India last time, knocked them off in a Test series, and then they've come to India again and knocked them off in a one-day series. So they're not scared of India. They've got New Zealand they're the little dog. India's the big dog, but they've gone there and beaten them twice. The only thing remaining, and I throw down this gauntlet to you, New Zealand, come to Australia and beat Australia. I want to see a New Zealand team that doesn't New Zealand has a mental block when playing Australia. It's borne out over a really long period of time. You've got 4 tests in Australia at the end of this year. Let this be the time when the mental block is dissolved.
Jeff, one more thing on milestones. It'd be remiss of me not to mention that Sri Lankan left-arm orthodox spinner Malinda Pushpakumara has picked up his 1,000th first-class wicket. The little pint-sized spinner played a bit of Test cricket about a decade ago, I reckon. He's played 20 years of first-class cricket and reached the 1,000 yesterday. So in totality, 1,005 wickets at an average of 20.02. Very neat, nearly a bang-on average of 20. There won't be many cricketers left who'll get to 1,000 first-class wickets for a whole range of reasons. Jimmy Anderson did, was it 2 seasons ago, I reckon, Jeff? Jimmy got to his 1,000th maybe 3 seasons ago. And he's still going at age 43 this season. Pushpakumara is 38 at the moment, so I suppose he can crack on for another 5 years, and who knows where he might end up as a Sri Lankan spinner. But, these are moments that are worth acknowledging because they happen so infrequently in the modern game.
If we're looking at who's going to get there, it's got to be someone who's going to play county cricket every mid-season and Shield cricket every year. And maybe, I don't know, do you want them to be – you probably don't want them to be a Test cricketer because that – will reduce the overall number of games that they'll play and be available for. So you want, Corey Rockacholi or someone.
Rockacholi's not a bad one, but he started a bit later. What about Aussie Todd Murphy, Hot Toddy? Hot Toddy, I'd love to see him play more Test cricket. I think he somehow has become underrated again. I don't know how this has happened exactly. He has 1 Test match where he doesn't do quite as well as the other 2 spinners in Sri Lanka, and suddenly but then again, he was the 12th man at Sydney, wasn't he? But if Murphy, for whatever reason, doesn't enjoy a Test career of any note, you can see a world where he plays for 20 years doing his thing. Let's back it in now. Yep. Todd Murphy, 1,000 first-class wickets, ideally with about 400 of them for Australia. But, it could happen. Because Nathan Lyon, the problem with Lyon is that he's only taken about sort of 100 wickets that aren't Test wickets in his first-class career, just with the way that
that's what I'm getting at. If you just play Test forever, you don't play a lot of first-class outside that. Murphy kind of looks like he's 40 already, and so he could play until 40 with no discernible change in outlook. Moving formats to the 20/1, the Australian T20 team is going to Pakistan to play 3 games before the World Cup. They've got a squad where 5 of the World Cup players are not in it for various reasons. There are 7 other players who are in that squad. One of the players who is not in either of them, who's been left out of the whole thing, is Stephen Peter Devereux-Smith, who has just got out at the Perth Stadium. I'm watching that game at the same moment. He's just top-edged one on 37 of 24 balls, but he was left a shitty job. The sixes have collapsed over there. They were 6 for bugger all, and Smith was trying to do all of the work himself. But he's had a hot run recently, made 100 the other night off 42 balls, the 3rd fastest ever in the Big Bash. Had that remarkable over where he declined the single to Barbara Azam and said, no, you stay at the other end because I want to take down this medium pacer, and then went 6-6-6-6-4 off a no ball wide .2, 32 runs off the over. Made 50 in his next game, and it doesn't take much in Australia, Adam. It takes a very short streak of form for everybody to jump on the train of, why isn't Smith opening in the T20 team? You morons, you've left him out. You shouldn't have left him out, seemingly forgetting that Mitchell Marsh and Travis Head are pretty good at opening in the T20 team and have been for a pretty long time now. There's a logjam in terms of players at the top of the order. But yes, Smith has enjoyed a fruitful late bit of the Big Bash season, although it looks like it might be ending. Not ending because they're top two, so they'll have to play an eliminator if they lose this game that it looks like they're about to lose.
Yeah, they go to the preliminary final, having earned a double chance through the second semi and all the rest of it. But no, look, my view on this is that Smith has made a decision a couple of years ago that he wants to be back in the T20 side, so he's prioritising the format. He's retired from one-day cricket last year. He's playing franchise cricket. Of course, he played in the 100 last year, the MLC for 2 seasons now. Every opportunity he has to come back to the Big Bash, he takes it. And unless I'm missing something, every time he returns, he makes a shitload of runs. As Robert Craddock wrote in the paper yesterday, he's hired a full-time conditioning coach to get bigger for T20 bludgeoning. Like, he's doing all the things you would want of a professional to give himself the opportunity to get back. I think that's great. I actually think it's good. And the reason he wants to do all of this, he wants to be an Olympian. And I think that's great as well. I think that there is cynicism around cricket in the Olympics in some quarters, but if it means someone like Steve Smith is like, I am desperate to represent Australia at the Olympic Games, and I'm going to give myself every opportunity to do so, that's a good thing. It's one of the myriad benefits of cricket being at the Olympic Games. And look, he is stiff. I know his run of forms come after they've named the T20 World Cup squad. That was back a couple of weeks ago before they even played the Sydney Test match from memory. But still, if there was to be an injury, there's no guarantees that everyone will play the whole way through. They have the option to include players on the subs bench for a World Cup, don't they? They can add up to 3, can't they, in the lead up to a tournament. They would be mad not to take him. He remains the ultimate fix-it man. He's always been that guy. I'm no T20 expert, but I've seen those highlights. I've seen the way he struck the ball, how sweetly it sounded off the bat. That's just an intuitive thing, how well he must be hitting the ball to make it sound so fucking good. I think they should have taken him to Pakistan. They should have had a look, because Maxi's not going. I'm not saying they perform the same role, but those games don't have an awful lot riding on them. They're a glorified warm-up tournament for the World Cup. They should have taken Smith there, but Smith said himself that he's probably left his run a little bit late, but he's not giving up hope. He still wants to be there at the Olympic Games. That remains the main game for him, and good luck to him for it. I'm looking forward to seeing where this story ends. If Steve Smith ends up winning an Olympic gold medal, let's say, and that's that's fairy tale stuff, what a remarkable end to his career that would be. So yeah, definitely one to watch. And it's not just because of his reputation. It's due to his results and due to the work he's doing behind the scenes to give himself every chance to get back. It's not sort of a Smith on reputation. It's a Smith on substance.
You watched Steve Waugh accept his Commonwealth Games silver medal in 97, and who wouldn't be inspired by that? Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't
this is
say,
different.
I want
the Olympics
that to be
is
me.
Different.
I want that to if you got 6 teams to beat at the Olympics, so half the teams are getting a medal, you're coming home with one. Look, it could happen. The reserve bats in the squad, so as in the ones who are seemingly next in their thinking, as in they're going to Pakistan but not going to the World Cup. Mitch Owen, Orion Phillip, equal intentions, and Matt Renshaw. So presumably that means they're all ahead of Smith in the pecking order at the moment. But who knows? That could change pretty quickly.
Does that make sense to you? Does that pass the sniff test? I mean, I'm you're never going to hear a bad word out of me about cruel intentions, Ryan Phillippe, right? But does that make sense? Does that tally in your brain that he would be ahead of Smith in any pecking order?
No,
I get it. They're
really.
investing. I get the thinking behind it. They're investing, right? You're investing in the future. But is he?
But Philip is not exactly youth either. It's not like he's not. He's not fresh out the academy.
No, far from it. I understand where they're going with it, but yeah. Anyway, they have time on their side. The World Cup doesn't start for a few weeks, as we know. A bit like Ian Thorpe and what's his name? Feel bad for not remembering it now. Craig. Tom Decent's listening at this and punching his phone because I can't remember it as a fellow Olympophile. Craig Stevens. Right. When Craig Stevens won the 400 metre spot for the 2004 Olympics at Athens, and they found a way to get Ian Thorpe into that event, and of course won it famously on the opening night of competition. If they want to get Smith in, they might have a Craig Stevens who might fall in the pool themselves to stuff up my analogy at the end. Anyway,
well, he's staying on. He's playing a lot of other franchise T20 and stuff, so he's kind of he's doing his best to stay in the game. One other bit before we get to a break, which is that they're bringing in the designated hitter rule, effectively. I mean, it's not called that, but they're copying baseball. Basically, the designated batter, so that basically you can be a fat old bloke who doesn't have to field. It's basically they can go and get a Chris Gale type who has no knees and can't move and not have the liability of having to put them in the field, but someone who can stand there and hit dingers. Essentially, that's how I read this. It's not even a proposed rule that will come in for next season. They're just legalising the fact that one player is allowed to bat while having a fielding sub do the fielding for them. Which I don't know if this smacks. Does this say elite competition? Does this say highest level performance, or does this say washed up old carnival hack?
Well, what it says is we're moving nearer and nearer to that model like American football, where you've got a defensive team and an offensive team, right? And this will be something that we continue to see. I suspect we've seen versions of it in other T20 comps. The happiest bloke in Australia will be Chris Lynn. He's actively been campaigning for this, and good on him. He's one of the funniest blokes in the game, Chris Lynn, and talks about it all the time, doesn't he? About how this will extend his career, which is already insane, by the way. He's got like 47 teams on his Crick Info page. So keep smacking those dingers, Linny, and hopefully this will extend your career. We probably could talk more about the Big Bash, but we might park that for there because we're going to have some results to talk about in the Big Bash when we do our Thursday weekly. So we'll just stay put on Big Bash for now. And if you haven't seen the Steve Smith Barbara Azam stuff, you probably don't need Jeff and me to spend 5 minutes on it, but it is very funny content, to use the modern jargon. Jeff, our show's brought to you by Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm, and we're telling the stories of Maurice Blackburn on our shows at the moment. One of them relates to Richard, who was a mechanic on a coal mine. He was changing a hydraulic connection on a massive bulldozer in an area known as the Hellhole. And then with both arms extended and his feet dangling below, he felt a pop and a sharp pain in his back. He knew something was wrong. Despite the pain, he managed to get out of the bulldozer. And that morning, his task of changing that hydraulic connection had been assigned to one person. Despite the degree of difficulty involved, only one person. Workplace safety at the mine had long been compromised by short staffing. There was time pressure on the jobs as well, not enough people to do them safely. And Richard, who had previously asked for assistance that had been shrugged off, having taken a month to recover, he aggravated the injury when he returned to the mine. Physio and cortisone injections were not enough to see him return to work, and then left with no income. He approached Maurice Blackburn. He felt guilty for bringing a claim against his workplace, despite knowing his unsafe conditions had caused the injury. But Maurice Blackburn were able to liaise directly with WorkCover, coordinated the treatment providers to ensure that was all funded, and kept his wife up to date throughout the claim. And then once those supporting statements from co-workers were gathered, he received the compensation he was entitled to and is now planning a comfortable retirement. So again, an example of the type of work that Maurice Blackburn do on behalf of hardworking Australians, so much of it on that no-win, no-fee basis. We've got a lot more to talk about on Maurice Blackburn in a competition of sorts we'll be running over the next couple of months, but we'll keep telling their stories as well, because they're all worthy stories, most of which deal with where hardworking Australians have had something horrible like this happen to them, and Maurice Blackburn have been there to fill the void. And you can learn more about them by clicking the link in our show notes or searching Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm.
Thanks to Maurice Blackburn, the Sydney Sixers are 7 wickets down, not looking good for them in the West. When we come back, we will be speaking to Emma John. It is the final word. Jeff Lehmann, Adam Collins, and Emma John, who's sitting next to me at the moment, because you're still in Australia, Emma, and you've been traversing the great state of Victoria. You've been out in the regions, but there was a place we wanted you to get to. There was a place we recommended. We put you in touch with the relevant people. Tell me what happened.
Yeah, so you had told me, because I was already heading up to the Grampians, and you had said the place, if you can get there, the place you have to go is Harrow, because it's got this amazing cricket history. And it's really interesting. I got in touch with Josie, who runs the Harrow Discovery Centre and Johnny Muller Interpretive Centre. And even when I was on the phone to her, she said, "Oh, I'm so delighted that you're going to come, because quite often people get all the way up here and then we're another hour away and people suddenly say, oh, that's too much." And they've already driven at least 3 hours to get up to the Grampians, which, are these beautiful, mountain ranges. I have to say it was the best thing that I did while I was up there. I mean, I had a wonderful time, but I am so glad as a cricket nut that I made that extra effort to go across to Harrow. So even before you get there, it was a beautiful drive. You've been in the mountains, and actually as you drive out to Harrow, you start going through this beautiful rolling countryside, these golden hills of farmland, and it really is quite fun driving. I love driving, and this is kind of real up and downy. And then when you get to Harrow, it reminded me a little bit of American frontier towns where you drive in and there's just one street. That's pretty much the entire town. There's just one street. I think she said there's a population of maybe 100 people, something like that.
About that, yeah.
And on this one street, you've got all these beautiful historic buildings, I guess 150 years old or something like that. And in the middle, the jewel of this town is a cricket museum, essentially. It used to be the old bank, and they have transformed the old bank, which is quite a big space, into a museum that is really dedicated to the 1868 Aboriginal 11 tour of England, which was the first Australia cricket team to tour England before there was ever a test series, before the Ashes were invented. This is kind of the Australian tour. And they've got rooms and rooms dedicated to this tour because Harrow was the place that Johnny Muller, who was like the star of that tour, lived and played his cricket. I'm so glad you sent me there, because it was genuinely, of all the places I've been in Australia, it was the most unexpected delight that I found.
I think for you and me, Adam, as well, we wound up there a few years ago, and similarly, almost by chance, that, we should go and look into this place. We've heard a little bit about it. And it's ended up being a place that we've had a fair bit to do with over the few years since, and somewhere that's pretty close to our hearts.
Yeah, it's evocative hearing you speak about it, Emma. It's quite a moving place and quite a moving journey. I mean, I love the way you talk about the sort of the rolling scenery on the way in, and then Josie's such a diamond of a human being. I saw her briefly in the tunnel of the MCG where you go out onto the field of play when she was about to present the Johnny Muller medal this year. Josh Tongue was a lovely moment. Just caught up with her and, reminded of each other's experience there a few years ago when Jeff and I had the privilege of being there. But the care and the dedication that's gone into this collection, Emma, I mean, you've seen it firsthand now. Talk us through the cricket bits, because a lot of people listening to this will be drawn into visiting on that alone, I'm certain.
So it really does. Through the rooms, you get the story of the whole tour from the beginnings of why were there, Aboriginal people playing cricket. Well, the first room will explain all about the Indigenous workers on various of these stations. It's very unflinching about why were there Indigenous workers on the stations. Well, because they had been dispossessed of the land. It tells the real story of what was happening there, because we know that cricket has this difficult history that has dispossession, sometimes violence. It was a sport that was used as a tool of colonization. So we know that there's that within our sport. And this is what is so wonderful about this museum, that it combines both the truth of that history, but with the genuine love of the game and, the pleasure, why it was embraced by these particular players who went and came over to England and who had found that they were really good at it. Up the road from the Discovery Centre is I think it's called the Johnny Muller Oval, is it?
These days, yeah.
And it's like the little local cricket ground where he played his cricket. And it's wonderful because as you get there, Josie Sangster is her name. She is this wonderful woman who sort of runs and oversees, and she's the person who meets you at the museum, and she's passionate about it. She drove me up to the Oval, and there was a game going on, coloured clothing game. And she said, if you look to your right, so this is outside the ground, on the other side of the road, there's a little cairn halfway up the hill. That cairn shows where Johnny Muller hit his longest six. And it is a long way from the middle. And so it's that kind of, it's this story as you go through that the museum tells, so many objects, so many original objects, brilliant kind of interpretation of these players who they were just really good players. I mean, that six, is the sort of one of the tributes to it.
The empirical evidence.
And then there's all the other stuff about the exhibitions that Touring 11 were doing at the same time, because obviously these tours were there to make money. So within the museum is a cabinet full of the instruments, the tools that Yangan Dinajuk, the tools that he used to entertain the crowd, clubs and boomerangs, and there would be lots of these kind of additional games, and proved the skill of these players that they're coming over. They've had this intensely long journey to get there. I mean, I think that was one of the things that I really hadn't thought about, was that, I mean, for anybody at that time, travel was a big deal, but for an Indigenous player who has lived on country, even going to Melbourne, even going to the city, even going to the coast was completely outside their experience. But then to get on a ship and go all the way to England, that's the equivalent of intergalactic travel, I would say.
Yeah, and they had to get smuggled out of the state because they were blocked from leaving in the first place, and had to effectively escape the colony as it was to get there. You also left the town. Josie took you further afield. Where else did you go?
I went to the watering hole. What is watering hole? Water hole. Watering hole is something else. That's where you go to drink. The water hole, where Johnny Muller ultimately ended up living, and I got to sit at his water hole where he would have sat, he would have fished, he would have gone into the bush, hunted for rabbits, and the various other things were there. And there's even a tree there that, was known to be the place where he sheltered, where he would sleep. You're literally walking in his footsteps of really, one of the first great Australian cricketing stars.
Great stuff. This bringing back terrific memories when Jeff and I were there a few years ago. Emma, you were in the Grampians more generally, and I know you hit up some other spots that I've loved when back in Victoria, my home state.
I mean, I really did fall in love with the Grampians. What a lovely place. Hall's Gap is this wonderful community. I think they say that really in terms of permanent residents, again, there's only about 300 of them or so, but it's, a place that thousands upon thousands of people come for their holidays, the world-class climbing and all this kind of thing. I actually went there to go and visit some of the Indigenous rock art sites. That is the original art of the Grampians, and it's actually got the most Indigenous art sites of the whole of Victoria in this one kind of concentrated place. Most of those places are sacred and private and secret, but we are allowed to go and visit 5 of them, and you get to see things like children's hands stenciled on the wall in ochre and stick figures, and there's this completely unique depiction of Bunjil, who is an Indigenous god creator figure, and that is known to be the only representation of Bunjil that exists. So you feel very special going and seeing these places. But there's also sort of like, so that was kind of one adventure. But I mean, goodness me, there's a little town as well, even smaller, a village called Dunkeld just outside. And I know that you've been there, Adam.
Let's call it for one of these extraordinary fine dining experience at the Royal Mail Hotel. I've been very fortunate to have been taken there before. My parents live in rural Victoria, so I've been out that way in the West in the past. But you had a chance to eat there and enjoy the experience.
I had the degustation menu. That's tasting menu for anybody who doesn't speak French or doesn't go to fancy restaurants. And it was incredible. The restaurant is called Wickens, and I was there on New Year's Eve. So it was a really special way to see in the new year. There was champagne. There was some very local Victorian wine that was just, heavenly, and incredibly kind of, top notch nosh, if that's what we can call it.
from memory, when visiting before and going on a tour there, isn't there a repository of wine that goes back like literally hundreds of years now or something like that?
Yes, it's amazing. And it's a kind of like this walk-in cellar with see-through walls. So actually you walk past it on your way into the restaurant and it's just, it looks very impressive. I mean, it kind of looks like the kind of place where you'd, I don't know, stage some sort of heist if you wanted to kind of just like, just run off with the world's greatest wines.
Well, probably not. I realise saying hundreds of years might be overstretching it, but you know what I mean? Decades old wine that's been collected and finds its home in this gorgeous little place, Dunkeld.
So talking of Victorian drinks, I actually have brought one, which is not from my Grampians trip, but from another trip that I did recently. Daylesford and Hepburn Springs are the place where the greatest concentration of mineral springs in the whole of Australia. So a lot of people in Australia who I've talked to on this trip don't even know that you guys have mineral springs. Okay. This is really interesting to me. I think it's 39 of them. Over 60% of them are concentrated in this tiny area of Daylesford and Hepburn Springs. And there are just loads of pumps and they're all different. They've all got different levels of minerals in. And I have brought a bottle back from Lionville Spring, which I was absolutely assured is one of the most palatable of the springs. So I've got a bottle of it here, and I've got.
Considering this is largely an audio medium, this is a green sports drink bottle like Emma might take to the gym. So the presentation is not necessarily all you might think. But
I have poured you a nice glass. We've got a fancy glass to pour it into.
Not the first time we've done live drink tasting on the show either. So there's a through line there, Jeff.
So
there's a fair bit going on in this. I mean, in terms of a flavour profile for water, there's a lot more going on than in your average glass.
Than what I'm drinking right now, my gin bottle myself.
Yeah, it does taste minerally. It tastes like
metallic, right?
But in like quite a nourishing way. It tastes like something that you would healthy things in that you'd mix into your water.
Exactly. I mean, it both tastes and kind of looks like the kind of isotonic sports drink that people pay loads of money for now. But it's free. You can just like walk up to any of these pubs, and people do. This is so the locals swear by it. There are loads of locals who literally won't drink anything else. They don't drink tap water. They won't drink bottled water. They won't drink rainwater. They will just turn up, and apparently they turn up with just enormous, huge, vast vats, which they will then fill with this spring water every week. Adam can see it, and he can see that it is not clear. It has a kind
looks like a white wine.
Yes, it does. It's got a really yellowy, greeny tinge. And,
looks like the kind of thing you might want to, it looks like it's got, restorative thing. You might try and buy a 600-litre bottle of it, milliliter bottle of it, Jeff, after a night out or something like that to make you healthy the next day.
Yeah,
along those lines.
The best thing about this one is it doesn't smell of rotten eggs, which several of them, believe me, I did the taste test and several of them come out quite sulphurous. This one doesn't.
I wish we had the time to talk about rural Victoria in every single corner of it. I could have sent you, and Jeff as well. Jeff and I have been really lucky in our lives to have spent heaps of time in regional Victoria. I mean, it's such a glorious, layered place.
Yeah, it's part of the history, but we will leave it there for today. Thanks to Tourism Australia, who've been working with the three of us to send Emma around to all these places and to make sure that we are able to help you tell the stories of where you've been. There'll be more to come over the next couple of weeks as well. And nice to see you again today.
Nice to see you, and cheers.
Cheers. Thank you to Emma. And I love when someone actually does the thing that you suggest, when you're like, oh, you've got to watch this movie, you've got to listen to this record, you've got to go to this small Victorian country town, and then they actually follow through and do it. It's like one of the great feelings when, and then even better, they come back and say your recommendation was the best thing I did on my trip. That's special stuff.
I love that as well. I got a message through from one of our listeners, Steve, overnight, who said, having heard Emma talk about how great the Adelaide Fringe was on our previous episode, he wants to know when we're going to do a Final Word Adelaide Fringe tour. So obviously this is having an effect, people listening in the Northern Hemisphere with Emma telling her great stories there with Tourism Australia. So that's nice and fun. We'll keep doing that over the next little while, Jeff.
Yep. Got a couple more weeks to go on that. Let us go to England. Let's go to some county cricket. A quick reminder, I've just popped a Stomping Ground Hazy Pale. If you want to win a case of that, listen to Storytime. That's how it works. We're giving away a couple of cases on Storytime each week. You just need to join the patreon.com/thefinalword. Join up there. If you stick around until the end of the month, then you're into the draw, and we'll pick a couple of names randomly each time we do Storytime. Listen in and find out if that was you. County cricket. Well, this is an interesting one. And this story that's come through about Sussex, famously the Sharks, famously where Jofra has bowled some of those ridiculous spells where they go, here's every ball that Jofra Archer bowled this morning, and they're all absolutely horrendous in terms of you wouldn't want to be the batter facing them. But the reporting on Sussex is that the finances are a mess, allegations of financial mismanagement, breaches of the sustainability regulations. That's not talking about environmental impact, that's about financial sustainability. Basically, they've been naughty cornered. The ECB will oversee their spending for a period of time and have to approve any major expenditure, and it leaves you with an impression, and perhaps you can throw some light on this, of the haves and the have-nots in terms of the 100 sale, all of the money that's gone, a bunch of it to some of the clubs, whether much of it's going to the others, and the fact that there are always a number of county clubs in trouble financially.
Yeah, well, look, let's be, the bigger picture perspective is that things will be better for these counties who are in strife at the moment. They're according to the report here, and this is great work from Matt Hughes and Ali Martin in The Guardian, who broke the story. 5 of the 18 first-class counties are in the red zone. So there's red, amber, green, a bit like Winnie's school. They have red, amber, green for how well they're behaving. So it applies for the sustainability rating of the financial situation for their businesses. And they've had trouble off field. Pete Fitzboyden, who we've had on the program before, when he was brought in to fix up Scottish cricket when it was in disarray a few years ago. He left as chief exec of Sussex, and they haven't got a full-time replacement as yet. So there's a fair bit going on down there at Hove. But remember, the good times are coming, because the non-hosts of the 100 are about to share in this enormous wealth. I mean, they raised over $500 million in flogging the franchises that are now going to be changing in their complexion in 2026.
Right. But once that's split up 18 ways, how much does...
Oh, no. This is serious money. No.
How does this work?
Don't undermine. It's going to be... It's an absolute bonanza for them. There's no jeopardy about... But the thing is, and where there's some frustration from some counties, as I understand it, some frustration for some counties is that they kind of want the money now, because don't you always, right? Everyone wants the money now. And the ECB are like, well, hang on a minute. You're going to get your money, but you've got to at least prove to us A, B, C. They're providing checklists before they give them what's tantamount to a blank check. What they don't want is counties getting the money and pissing it up against the wall, spending it on sort of short-term solutions, like players, for instance. They want to see evidence that it's being used to service existing debt or indeed pay it off, infrastructure investment, and other investments that will return them an ongoing revenue stream. So where they can invest wisely, so that they have the ability to keep making money off this and this sort of one-off windfall, so that it doesn't become only a benefit to the club in 2026. So they don't want them to botch it. And that is an important part of this process. I don't think that's a small thing. Occasionally the ECB put in special measures with counties to make sure they've got their shit together. They don't want to be going down this path. They want to get it right at the first time. They don't want to have to kind of tidy this up into the future. So this is one small example, I suppose, of where Sussex have found themselves in strife. It will be improved dramatically once there's the allocation of these dividends, well, not dividends, but of the sale, sorry. It's this awkward in-betweeny bit, which is going to still make things challenging for counties in the shorter term. So we'll keep an eye on that one.
My impression of it is that there's a level of discontent with some of the counties, so the ones who hold the titles as well, that they've been pitched, those running the show have been pitched this idea that, well, we've got to do this, we've got to make this sale because we're going to get this much money and it'll all be put into the club. And now that the sale's been done, the position is changing to, well, all of that money has to go to the franchise, has to be used to run the 100 franchise, or what will become the T20 franchise, rather than going into the club itself. So I think that...
But that's only for the ones who own. That's for the 8. So this is different because Sussex aren't in the 8. So
No.
yeah, so the benefit of being in the 8 is that you were gifted 51% of the club. So if you're Lancs, Yorkshire, well, accepting that there's some privatisation going on there as well, but with Yorkshire having, of course, now been sold holus bolus, well, the process of that anyway, well underway. So, and similarly down at Hampshire with the Southern Brave and the connection between the county's ownership and the franchise's ownership being kind of brought under one broader umbrella, as I understand it again. So yeah, it's teething problems. But if you're a county that's got 100 franchise, you are structurally advantaged. Even if you've got short-term debt, you've got the ability to make an absolute bonanza.
But even within the counties themselves, within the clubs themselves, there's something of a schism between the traditionalists who run the club or who see the club as one entity and the people who've made the pitch that we have to sell so that we get money into the club, but now that money is very much likely to be funneled to one part of the club's operation and not to show up in other parts of the club's operation. So I think that distribution part of it's going to be pretty interesting, and whether the non-team, the non-franchise clubs end up with enough money to actually make a sizable difference. I'm yet to be convinced about that. Some other bits and pieces.
But it can't not when it's talking about like 30 million. Like it can't not with the size of business. They'd have to fuck it up so spectacularly. Like even if you're a club that's been in strife financially, like Gloucestershire, this should save Gloucestershire and make it sustainable for another 100 years if they get it right. And there's no guarantees for these things. Yeah, it's like winning the lottery.
30,
right?
You can spend 30 million pretty quickly if you don't make good choices.
Well, this is the point. Like, what's that stat about people who became multimillionaires out of the lottery who go bankrupt? Like, you can do it, which is why I understand why the ECB are fairly, it's a hands-on approach and. Right, fair enough. Ultimately, it's money that they've raised. That Gloucestershire had nothing to do with the 100 sale. They're the beneficiaries of it, but they've done nothing to to make it so. Anyway, there's more going on in the county game. Like we're at that stage of the year where you're seeing signings left, right, and centre. It's impossible to stay on top of all of them. But Jeff, some interesting ones from an Aussie perspective. So Jake Lehmann, this came up a couple of weeks ago. He's been named today the Domestic Player of the Year in Australia. He had that brilliant finish to the Shield season where South Australia won it earlier in 25. And of course, he started the season well this year too. And, can't be a million miles away in theory from banging the door down, I suppose. But at age 32, he's decided to pull the ripcord instead and move full-time to be a county player. It doesn't preclude him from playing for South Australia, but it does mean that the way it works, he'll be identified as an England passport player. So that changes his eligibility, if you like, and it means that, in effect, he can't play for Australia, which is quite interesting.
So he's made that call. AJ Tyers made that call, and Sam Whiteman's made that call. So, essentially they can't play. I mean, I saw some pretty ridiculous reporting on it saying, that they'd turned their backs on an Australian career. AJ Tyers had his time and, couldn't get a game for the Renegades, let alone Australia in recent times. Sam Whiteman's well past the age, really, and not likely. Lehmann is the interesting one because, one more good season and you never know. But I suppose he's into his 30s already and they'll be looking at that age group a generation down, you would have thought, when it comes to replacements coming in. So, broadly, it's a sensible, prosaic sort of approach. You're being realistic. You're giving up on the dream, but making a sensible decision that you can go and earn a solid living there. So Ty will play at Yorkshire in their T20 setup. I don't think he's going to be playing red ball, but Lehmann will be at Hampshire and Whiteman will be at Yorkshire as well. So two of the Australians heading there. The other story that was going around that the top of the English setup, and this isn't based on any official statement, but there was news reporting in the UK saying that those at the top of the ECB were considering or were making noises about suggesting to the counties that they shouldn't hire Australian players in 2027 so that they didn't have Australians getting their eye in county cricket, playing red ball cricket in England ahead of the Ashes. You would think if it happened, it would be an informal request to counties. You would also think that if they tried to do anything more formal, then some Australian player could sue the shit out of them, because surely there'd be some sort of legal breach there that you can't go in and say, well, you're not allowed to hire anybody from this country.
And also the counties would tell them to get fucked.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, let's use Sussex. We were talking about Sussex a moment ago.
Yeah.
Steve Smith batted at number 4. I mean, he only played 3 games or whatever, but what an unbelievable surge of activity around Sussex cricket that served to be in 2023. This is such a boring, repetitive tale. Every time, I reckon in my whole time following cricket, there's been some version of this story rattling around when England have done poorly, saying, oh, we should really stop the Australians playing in the championship in Ashes years when, counties have agency. They want to win tournaments and they've got the ability to have overseas players, as if they're going to deny themselves the chance to have Australians playing for them. It's never going to happen. It's just the usual windbag stuff that you see at this time of the cycle when England have been pantsed in Australia, as is fairly routine.
Well, it's curious then that Ben Stokes chased the rabbit. You know, when the lure was set, off he went. This is what Stokes said when asked about it. Quote, "It is odd when you see touring players given opportunities to play county cricket before a big series. I've never understood it. You never see it anywhere else in the world. I don't think Australia would sign a visa for one of our lads playing Sheffield Shield games before an Ashes." So a couple of things that I want to put down in response to this, Adam, and let me know what you think. One, what do you mean Australia wouldn't sign a visa? Like, CA's not dishing out the visas, and the Australian government's not going to ban an English player from coming because they play for England. So, not sure that you've entirely grasped border control there. Maybe watch the documentary on British TV a bit more. 2, you've only got 6 teams with their own development programs, so of course they're less likely to top up with mid-tier English players in the same way as counties will with mid-tier Australian players. 3, if someone really, really good wanted to play, if Joe Root rocked up and said, "Can I play for South Australia?" they'd probably hire him. If Harry Brook or Jofra Archer, a real high-grade talent was available, most teams would probably find a space for them if they were offering to play a bunch of games. 4, this is Ben Stokes, who, as far as we can tell, thinks that county cricket sucks and is irrelevant when it comes to picking the national team because it's not good enough. 5, this is from the setup that thought that playing in the country that they were going to tour was unnecessary and that they didn't actually need to do that in order to play well. So which is it? If you think that playing the Sheffield Shield would help your players, why wouldn't you come to Australia to play some cricket? If you think that playing in England will help Australian players ahead of the Ashes, why wouldn't you try to do something similar? Like, there's so much contradiction to all of this.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is the usual type of thing we see trotted out every 4 years. Every 2 years, because the same story will be printed in the early months of 27. I remember seeing it when Smith was out prepping in England in 2023. Look, you're right. If Stokes himself or Joe Root or Harry Brook or Jofra Archer pitched up to play in the Shield, there would be a conversation had about that. But that doesn't happen because there are other competing interests at that time of the year before they're meant to be coming over. There's more of a culture of playing cricket in England. There are 18 first-class counties. There are more opportunities. That's just always the way it's been. England players do play in Australia. They play club cricket because most of the county players who come out here wouldn't ever get a game. And there's other stipulations within the rules as well. But just broadly speaking, if you're a county player playing first-grade cricket, tends to be where you land. That's historically the way it's gone. There have been notable exceptions, Ian Botham not least, but that's the way it's gone more often than not. Mason Crane, of course, played some Shield cricket before finding himself in the England team a couple of Ashes cycles ago, but that is not the norm. To round that out, most states wouldn't want most of the England players available.
No.
They wouldn't get a game ahead of most of the Aussies who are most of the time, most England players trying to make an impact in Australian conditions away from home wouldn't knock out one of the Aussies who are already doing the job because they're being bred to perform in Aussie conditions, whereas it's not as clear cut as that for England, as we saw very obviously in the last couple of months.
Yeah, and you look at the calibre of international players who have played Shield cricket, and it's Garfield Sobers, it's Barry Richards, it's Joel Garner, it's Michael Holding, it's Ian Botham. That's the way that
it'd be great.
Has happened.
I mean, it'd be awesome if it happened, but the fact that Alysa Cook nearly ended up in the Sheffield Shield a few years ago if not for COVID. That would have been awesome. But Alistair Cook with 34 Test hundreds, you know what I mean? Like there is a distinction there between some players and others. And I'd love to see it. You know what? I'd relish it. If 3 or 4 England players want to come out and tune up for the next Ashes in Australia by playing Shield cricket, bring it on. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing for the Sheffield Shield? I look forward to them signing up to that, but I don't think it's ever going to happen.
We are going to take a break and then we're going to talk to England captain Heather Knight. This is the final word. It's season 19. It's episode 22. And before we get to Heather Knight, Adam, your footwear of choice for the last few months, the biggest boots in the land. You talked about Jake Lehmann coming over. He's not going to Northants. When you say that Jake Lehmann's coming, you think, surely his dad's hired him at Northants and he's going to go and play there. No, he'll play at Hampshire, but at Northants they will have Big Boots UK because they're one of the sponsors of the club, and they have been the sponsors of your feet for the last few months.
Yeah, I love this. Ryan Stedden has that. It's a family-owned business, right? Let's be clear about this. It's a distributor of Australian boots in the UK. They do a great job, small family business, and yet they are investing in cricket, which I think is terrific. So, the Darren Lehmann connection there. They're Darren Lehmann's personal sponsor at Northants, I think it is, and the boots they make are great. I've been cruising on the Big Boots UK website since returning home and looking at their Chelsea boot, which I'm ever so fond of, to complement the riding boots that I've been getting around in for practically every day since we has been a work day in one form or another, which has meant I've been wearing boots rather than sneakers. They're primarily work boots. Most of the boots they produce are for, when you're on the work site. But there are so many other sort of fashionable boots that people would ordinarily wear. So Big Boots UK, links in the show notes, 10% off. Get yourself a pair of them. Treat yourself to a pair of them. It's someone's birthday somewhere. It's my wife's birthday tomorrow. Maybe I'll get her a pair of Big Boots UK. We'll
there
see.
You go.
I'm not sure about that.
You know a guy.
She very much likes my big boots. She likes my riding boots. And the link is there for you to tuck in as well. Thank you to Ryan and his team. More about them and an interview with Darren Lehmann, which I'm happy to plug ahead of time, is coming up not too far from now on the podcast. Jeff, yes, we are getting to Heather Knight. On the way into that, just wanted to give a little bit of context. So Heather has taken on a back office role at the London Spirit. So she's decided not to play. She'll be the director of cricket for the women's side of the operation. So Mo Bobat, who's worked with England for a long time now, has like both the men's and the women's team in his purview. And there's John Lewis coaching the women and Andy Flower coaching the men. But Heather Knight will be the conduit on the women's side of the operation. As she describes in our interview, she's missed 2 of the last 4 women's 100 competitions due to the injury she picked up. She had the hip injury a couple of years ago and a really bad hamstring tear last year, which took ages to recover. So she's got a bit of a taste for it. And I really admire the fact that she's seeing this as an opportunity to start laying a foundation for what comes next, whilst at the same time still having heaps to play for as an England international. World Cup this year. There's no sign that she's retiring. It's more that she's got an eye to life after cricket. And fair enough. She's given so much to the England team. She captained them for a decade nearly, more than 200 games in charge. She's earned the right to pick and choose a little bit, I reckon.
I wonder if it's awkward that John Lewis gets sacked as the England women's coach, where she's prominent in that team, and then you show up at your other job and he's coaching the team that you're also in charge of running.
She did talk to that in the press conference. She said that they've got a great relationship and they worked together for ages. And she was, she made some reflection on it. Was sad the way it ended for him at England, but I don't think there's any real issue there. So what we did at Lords yesterday, we had the men's and the women's renewals or direct signings is what I'm looking for. So the men, Dewell Brevis, Liam Livingston, Jamie Overton, Adam Zampa. The women, Charlie Dean, Mahika Gore, which is great. We talk about her in the chat. Grace Harris and Marizan Cap. But we're getting a sense of the way this is going to feel different. The branding with the egg and bacon as part of the strap, but not part of the badge of the team. There's a subtlety to it, trying to marry up, I guess, one end of the ground with the other to a certain extent. Better resourcing them before they can have more control over what they choose to do. Different types of sponsors, not just having the crisp packets on the front, but Barclays are involved, Nike are involved with the London Spirit, which are 2 big global brands, and now the chance for them to take a different direction under private ownership with the tech titans. And Jeff, you would have seen the amount of scrutiny that the Manchester Supergiants have been under this week for their release and the Joss Butler video. This was a nice kind of antidote to that.
The winged elephant With
Yeah,
nothing.
so I think
nothing.
it'll
An elephant is giant. You can give it that. If is it a super giant's a kind of star, isn't it? From my understanding, but yeah, the Joss Butler thing was genuinely a hostage video, wasn't it? Like making him sit at a table and then talk about how great it was to have wings because they would be off to a flying start, and saying like, "Oh, we will win lots of games of cricket." It's like somebody had a shotgun on him from behind that camera, surely. It was bizarre.
Mark my words, the biggest mistake that they've made through the sale process, the biggest mistake, and maybe this will go tremendously well more widely, letting them rename the teams. That is a howler. The amount of work that's gone into making these teams have some degree of identity and trying so hard to cut through with young people, especially young people who have got their playing shirts and all the rest of it, and then going, we will sell everything, including the team name. They'll live to regret that. It's a sign, I think, that the London Spirit didn't want to do that. They're like, no, we're going to stick with the name we've got. We're going to tweak our branding. We're going to go more with the Lord's Slope with the L, which you'll see on their logo. And I mentioned the egg and bacon because MCC will own 51% of the club, but they're not dispensing with what they've got. Up at Manchester, that's a huge blue. And you can sense the back foot they're now on in their PR. Remember how long it took for the 100 just to get over the hurdle of looking like a shambles at the start? Remember how bad it looked. Remember all of the different own goals that were scored. And they finally reached a place where it feels a bit more serious. And now they go back to having, and I know that they would have had limited control over what was being asked of them when IPL teams were coming in, but they should have said no. They said you can do whatever you want, but you can't tamper with the team names. We've already invested too much in the process of that. But now it's been lampooned. All of these have gone badly in one form or another, as best I can tell, probably with the exception of what happened at Lords, and almost a happy accident for them that they went last. So by contrast to the other ones last week, this is going to be an interesting transition year, to say the least.
Well, let's hear from Heather Knight about what's ahead of them.
Returning guest, Heather Knight. I reckon the last time we spoke to you, Heather, it was before you rattled off 100 in a Women's Ashes series in Canberra about, 5 or 6 years ago or something like that.
COVID restrictions, I think.
COVID restrictions. It was an odd series, but great to have you back in a very, very different capacity now. We're at Lords. We've been at the London Spirit. Let's call it the rebrand day. And your new role. Tell us all about what you're doing this year in the London Spirit architecture.
Yes, so my role is general manager of the women's side of things. So I won't be playing in the 100 this year. It was a bit of a choice. Mo approached me in the summer, so Mo Bobat, who's newly appointed director of cricket at London Spirit, he approached me in the summer whilst I was injured actually, and I was on the coaching staff of the Spirit just to sort of be around and things like that. He approached me about the role, and obviously had to make a decision whether to take it on, take a sort of slightly different new opportunity or continue playing the 100. And I guess for me it's a sort of look ahead to the future, and potentially when I do hang up the boots, trying to gain a few experiences outside of obviously my playing career, but I'm still very much playing for England, playing for Somerset, doing this role alongside it, which has been fun.
You don't often see it, do you? Because no one's retiring you off. Clearly you've still got a role to play as an England cricketer, but you are able to, I suppose the benefit of you having missed last season with that severe hamstring injury is you've had one foot behind the scenes anyway, right?
Yeah, look, it is very unusual. I'm pretty grateful for the ECB for allowing me to do this, really. I spent a lot of last year injured. It probably wasn't the best year for me, to be honest. And I guess you're even more aware of you're not immortal as a cricketer. Eventually, you are going to hang the boots up. And I've had a lot of friends that have obviously retired and found that transition tough. And this was an opportunity probably that came up at the right time whilst I was injured and whilst I was probably sort of looking ahead to the future, whilst obviously still having playing ambitions and still feel like I've got a lot to achieve as a player. So it was an opportunity I felt like was too good to let down, so it was perfect really, that sort of part-time role that I could do whilst I was playing. I've missed 2 out of the last 4 hundreds because I've been injured anyway, and it is a competition I do really enjoy playing in and really enjoyed captaining actually. It's quite unique in that regard, but this felt like an opportunity that I really wanted to take on and one that I've really enjoyed doing so far.
At a really good time. It feels I mean, we haven't followed the 100 that closely on the podcast, although we are going to try more this year. But it does feel like it's a bit more serious, right? Like the auction, the rebrand, the amount of work that's gone on behind the scenes with rebuilding the teams, even the very fact that you're going to have more budget. It's not all centrally controlled.
Yep.
There are a number of things happening at once, which ideally will lead to a comp in 26 that does have more buy-in across the board.
I think so. I think that's the plan, taking what has been really good out of the 100, and a lot of that has been the women's game. Like, it's been a huge sort of plus, and obviously I want that to continue. That you want the women's part of the competition to be forefront as the men's is, and part of me taking this role with Spirit was knowing that they want to take the women's side of things as seriously as the men's side of things, and obviously in terms of Mo and his expertise, that's kind of why he's got me on board with the women. But yeah, it does feel like slightly fresh, albeit with obviously the history of the last 5 years and being involved since the start at Spirit as well. You do have some affiliation to the place, to the team, to the brand, I guess, for want of a better word. So I'm glad that there's a little bit of continuity, but it does feel like it's a bit of a springboard the last 5 years to now have obviously the amount of money involved, the expertise of the ownership and different demands, I guess. And yeah, it feels like a fresh start that is hopefully going to propel the competition to be really one of the best out there.
Lords does things in increments, and the subtle rebrand with the egg and bacon and the slope being recognised in the L. I mean, little things as opposed to, I suppose, to the more extravagant rebrand up at Manchester, which has been widely lampooned during the week. But I mean, here they've found a way of maintaining the name, the look, the feel, and there's been quite a bit of work going on behind the scenes on that. Yeah,
there has, and I don't know what you think of the branding, but I like it. I think it's quite subtle. There's obviously the nod to the MCC membership and the fact that they're obviously owning a professional team for the first time. Obviously, MCC have amazing experience in cricket, but they've never owned a team, so this is quite a unique starting point for everyone at the MCC even. So yeah, I really like it. I think it's sort of a nod to Lords and the prestige and the history of the place, but also like what the 100 brings. And you're here on match day during the 100 over the last few years, and it does feel really fresh and really different, and I think the people at the MCC have embraced that and want to be a part of that. And yeah, I guess historically the MCC, rightly or wrongly, have been associated with a certain kind of people, I guess, and in my experience that hasn't been the case, and they've been brilliant actually in terms of setting up this new, I guess, refresh for the 100 and making Lords feel at home for the women and for the 100. And yeah, when you come here on match day, and hopefully we're going to continue to build on that and make things better, but it does really feel like a different Lords and a very different atmosphere as well. I
wonder if you've had a chance to reflect on all of this, like when we first met over a decade ago, right, when the game was so different. You were in that semi-pro into pro kind of transition phase there at that stage. We were pre even the Kia Super League, going back to before that tournament began, to now where it's just second nature. Well, of course this will be a huge driver forward of involvement in the women's game. Of course Lords will be front and centre of that with the Spirit here too. It's we're only talking 10 or 11 years to make it such a certain thing.
Yeah, definitely. And that first year of the 100 was actually an accident to become double headers. So originally pre-COVID it was going to be slightly separate competitions. We were going to play as the female side of it on smaller grounds, and because of COVID they sort of landed on the double header model and thought, wow, actually this is pretty cool, this works. The public just got on board with the women's game, which was a really cool thing, and obviously the length of the game and how the 100 is slightly shorter, it makes the double header model actually more feasible, right? Because you get 2 games, but it isn't like a mammoth day. I think they've got the sort of gap between the games right, in terms of it's quite quick. There's obviously the music element that they've had previously, and it's become a really good day out, and the women's side of it has become a huge part of the competition, which is really cool. But yeah, you're right, it just sort of, of course it's going to be part of the new thing of course women's cricket is alongside the men's game. And if you said that sort of 10, 11 years ago, even maybe 3-4 years ago, mightn't have believed it. So it's pretty cool where it's come, and hopefully it continues to do so. The
mechanics of your role, so you've had your player retentions today, Charlie Dean, Mahika Gore, Grace Harris and Marazan Cap, 4 outstanding cricketers indeed. I think we've had all of them on the pod at one stage or another. Mahika, who you would have first saw some years ago when we were in Hong Kong, wasn't it? Were you at that? I can't remember. You were at the second fair break. The second fair break where she...
Yeah, I missed that one. I was at the first one.
When she came into her own there and became an immediate sensation as a teenager, but recruited here and staying here. Grace Harris, who's such a massive person in the game, Marizan cap, who'll take the new ball with Mahika presumably, and Charlie Dean, who was captain last year. So an auction to follow in March, but 4 pillars of your team established today with the automatic signings.
Yeah, really delighted. We've got 4 brilliant players there, and I think with the view to playing at Lords, that new ball pairing of Marizan Cap and Mahika Gore is so exciting. Obviously, the movement that we've seen on the 100 pitches the last couple of years, it's been pretty tricky to bat in the power play. So that was a key kind of idea behind our signings and wanting to get those guys on board, and obviously 2 cricketers that are at different ends of their career. You've got Mahika, still very young, still learning her craft, but amazing amount of talent and potential. And obviously Marizan, proven world-class performer, one of the best all-rounders in the world for many years. And having faced her here at Lords, it's not that fun, the way she moves the ball. So that's really exciting. And obviously 2 players that were with us last year, Grace and Charlie, obviously speak for themselves, the year that Grace had for us. And Dino was brilliant stepping in as captain last year, and that leadership potential is certainly something that attracted us to get Charlie back on board and have that little bit of continuity, but also obviously with a little bit of tearing up of the teams as naturally as happened with the auction and how it's been set up this year. Those 2 do give us a bit of continuity and obviously 2 really exciting players that haven't played for London Spirit before as well. And
a brief eye to England stuff, I guess, with Mahika. She's made her debut a couple of seasons ago, but was picked young. They clearly want her to be front and centre of Generation Next when it comes to new ball bowling in that England team across the formats.
Definitely, obviously, was captain when Mahika made her debut, and there's something quite unique about her. She's a giant. She's got a really high release point, obviously left arm seamers, which aren't in huge supply in the women's game. So the bounce that she gets and the fact that she is able to swing the ball so late as well, that's quite unique. And I think in a young player, her accuracy is something that's been hugely impressive. You don't often see that in young seamers. You kind of expect them to not have that accuracy and to be quite unpredictable and erratic, because that's the nature of the beast, because bowling quick is really hard. So that's a real advantage for her, and she's got a huge ceiling, I think, as well. She's obviously bowled a lot with the new ball previously, but I know she's desperate to have the skills to bowl in all phases. She's a great character as well. She's I don't know if you've met Mick. She's really good at magic as well. So she probably sort of wandered over to you and said, "Oh, do you want to see a magic trick?"
Good to know.
Yeah, she's really cool chick and good character.
You're going to be busy. I kind of thinking it through here as you were speaking. You'll have the World Cup that precedes the hundreds, or Home World Cup, the final of which is here at Lords. That runs from the 12th of June till the 5th of July, I think the dates for the tournament. But having that, your Somerset commitments, of course, ambition to do whatever you can for England this year and into the future as well. I know you've been pretty good at juggling lots of things in the past, but having this added responsibility, that'll take up quite a bit of your time. Yeah, it will, and a lot of the heavy lifting will be done sort of pre-auction. So obviously we're in quite a unique situation with England where there aren't any competitive fixtures till May, which is probably one of the biggest gaps that I've had in my career, actually, which is quite strange. But it's really allowed me to get my teeth stuck into this and get all the things we need to get sorted done. And that was part of me taking the role as well. Mo, when I was talking through whether I wanted to do the role with Mo, like I was pretty clear with England and my playing commitments come first, and I've still got a lot of ambitions, and obviously having a home World Cup doesn't come around particularly often. So what happened last time, right? Last time the home World Cup 2017,
exactly.
You were just over there to our right holding up the World Cup in front of the Warner stand. It feels an eternity ago.
Yeah,
but they are memories that are evocative, right?
Of course, yeah. And there's nothing better really than playing in a home World Cup, and I think the success that we had in 2017 was a real springboard and an opportunity to push the game forward, and I think this T20 World Cup is going to be the same. So I certainly wouldn't want anything to get in the way of me performing at my best in that World Cup. But you're right, I've had a lot of experience of juggling things. I've obviously got a bit more time in my hands now. I'm not captain as well to do other things, and 100% confident that it's not going to take away from my playing ability at all. And that's actually something that I think helps me doing other bits, having sort of different plates spinning at different times, and that's something I've always done throughout my career, trying to not purely be known as a professional cricketer, to have other bits going on. And actually having those things, I think, has helped me in my career to actually get the best out of myself on the cricket field.
Brilliant. Heather, you're busy. You've got lots of interviews to get to. Thank you for sharing some time with us today, and we'll catch up with you through the course of the season here at the Spirit.
Cool. Cheers, Chloe.
That was England captain Heather Knight, who won't be on the field for the Spirit. And that is the show today, Adam. But it's not the end of the weekly show, because there'll be the second part of the weekly show, the bi-weekly show, which will be coming up in a couple of days' time once we've got a handle on the broader affairs of geopolitics / cricket as they pertain to the upcoming World Cup.
Who knows? It might be a model. It may work, because it is bloody busy. There is so much news in the cricket world right now. So we'll give it a go. Give us your feedback after the second one. Hold your fire right now. But there is a lot more to get into. Franchise stuff around the world on Thursday. If you like how much work we're doing at the moment, if you enjoyed the Sonny Baker interview, what an absolute diamond that bloke is. Listen to it if you haven't as yet. He's your new favourite player, trust me. Support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/the final word. That gets you in the running to win the Stomping Ground beer. All the other links for all the other great supporters that we've got are in the show notes as well. The discounts with the boots and the discounts with Zeus and so on. The discount with Zeus, which has increased, by the way, from 5% to 10%. We'll tell you more about that on the app on Thursday, but that's already tucked away in the show notes if you want to go in that direction and stop yourself from snoring before you get to, say, Valentine's Day, for instance. More on that then. But Jeff, busy time in the feed. World Cup coming up in a few weeks as well. So no better time to get behind us, and you can walk away with some Stomping Ground final word beer. That's my sell to you. And that's my my gratitude to everyone who has.
I'm convinced if I didn't already make this show, I would be joining up as we speak, but it would seem redundant for me to do so, because I feel I already give this show enough of my support. That's it. It's been the final word. It was episode 22 of season 19, and soon it'll be episode 23. That's the way these things work. He's Adam Collins. I'm Jeff Lehmann. Thanks to you for reaching the end. We'll see you very soon.